Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you guys today. And just wanting to make a few comments about Venus ingressing into Aries, which took place just yesterday, actually, on the 21st of March, early hours of the morning. I'll put the chart up shortly anyway so we can have a look at that. I really want to have a look at that chart and just explore a couple of themes that speak to me, and hopefully they'll speak to you as well. Because Venus in Aries is, it's not really a unique experience in the sense where, we have it frequently, or at least, once a year. The point, though, is that Venus, she's a very fast-moving body, except for when she's in her retrograde periods, and then her retrograde cycle speaks to an entirely different experience. She's not retrograde at the moment. She's just moved into Aries. So she was in Pisces from the 27th of March right through to the 21st of April. So the last few weeks we've had Venus in Pisces, which is her exalted position. A very lovely place for Venus. She's very happy there. But, at the same time, it's probably been quite a testing sort of last few weeks in terms of romance and the world of one's ideals around relationships and money, you can say as well. Venus does connect to money in a lot of different ways, but Venus really is about your own inner sense of self-worth, how you really feel about yourself. How do you feel about yourself when you're with yourself? The Venus really speaks to that. Do you feel comfortable in your own skin? Do you feel a sense of happiness? Venus equals happiness and Jupiter equals joy. So Venus generally is not a difficult energy. She's a yin energy, a feminine energy, and she's ultimately about pleasure, sensual pleasures, and Mars is about desires. So when you bring those two forces together, our sensual, sexual, erotic desire nature is triggered. And there's other ways of understanding Venus as well, though, just from the point of view of artistic expression and creativity, and also your social dimension. So anyway, moving out of Pisces, which has perhaps kept people in a bit of a dream kind of state about, what they've been experiencing in relationships. Perhaps you're in a relationship at the moment. So the Venus in Pisces would have just made components of your relationship perhaps a more unified sort of love, a unified sort of bond that was stimulated, that felt quite nice with somebody. It could have even been in your social circle, maybe connecting with some friends, just really, really enjoying and feeling quite blissful in a lot of ways, because Venus in Pisces is a very blissful energy. But the dangers with Pisces is always that sense of projecting ideals, onto another person or onto a relationship or onto, someone you really like, someone you're really attracted to. And it's the rose-colored glasses effect, not being able to really see things for what they actually are. So Venus in Pisces can have a real mixed sort of experience. On the one hand, it's so blissful, so enjoyable. It's a very soft energy. But on the other hand, it can bring a lot of disillusionment as well. And Pisces, unfortunately, is a sign that does strongly bring experiences of disappointment, And the disappointment comes because we've projected an illusion. We've projected an ideal, onto something or someone. And when that moment has passed, so when Venus is out of Pisces, for instance, and she's entering Aries, there's a much clearer view on what's actually going on with this situation in your life, or with this person, or with some finances as well, or with your social circle of friends. So now that Venus is in Aries, there's a very different vibration, a very different energy. Aries, for a start, is a masculine energy. It's a masculine sign, and Venus is not. She's yin. She's feminine. Now, Venus in Aries is wonderful on a number of different levels, but we do have to also acknowledge and accept that in the sign of Aries, she's in her detriment. So every sign has a dignity, or not every sign. Every sign is dignified or debilitated or in neutral position in terms of where the planet is in a particular sign at any given moment. So Venus in Aries is in her detriment, and in Scorpio she's in her detriment as well. Now, when she was in Pisces, she was exalted. It's an important note, even though it sounds maybe a bit technical or whatever the case. Planets in their dignity basically produce more, right? Produce more gifts, you could say. And Venus rules gifts, by the way. So in Pisces, her exaltation position, she had the potential to really offer a lot of different gifts. And when I say gifts, I don't mean, it doesn't have to be, something huge, a real grand sort of gesture. It can be, but it can just be the smallest gesture from somebody, in your life in the last few weeks that's offered you some kind of gift. That's Venus in Pisces. Now, in Aries, she's all about her passion, her desires, and she's very instinctual in Aries. So Venus in Aries is a good time to really connect with your instincts, right? And trust your instincts and follow your instincts. Your passion is very much triggered during this time as well. Also, your need for independence is triggered. So it can be very, very tricky, because Venus herself is not about independence. She's all about sharing. Venus just wants to share and indulge in all the sensual pleasures of life. That's the nature of Venus. But in Aries, she can get very self-orientated. We could even say narcissistic, right? That's quite extreme, but it is definitely possible. Or selfish, to soften that up a bit. And I'll unpack that further in a minute. But in Aries, the great thing about Venus is that she'll take risks. Okay, Aries is the sign of initiation, so it's a sign of stepping into something new, right? Aries is the new beginning of something always. So Venus in Aries, for the next few weeks, she'll be in there until the 15th of May. So it's not a long time at all. Venus in Aries is not necessarily enough to suggest that a new love relationship is going to begin for you, but it could certainly trigger or stimulate that desire and that initiation. Maybe you've been kind of laying low. If you're not in a relationship, you've been sort of laying low and not really putting yourself out there. Well, Venus in Aries will give you that sense of confidence, right? That courage, because Aries is all about courage, to initiate. It could be initiating somebody you've been thinking about for a while, somebody you like, you're attracted to, etc. This is all, it might sound superficial, and it sort of is, but it sort of isn't, because what's life about? It's about relationships, isn't it? We're always relating. So the world of relationships is really important, and how we participate, how we engage, how we connect, what our intentions are, what our motives are, all that sort of stuff is very important. So as Venus travels through the signs, she colors these different facets. So in Aries, it's about taking a risk, stepping into something that you perhaps normally, by normal standards, you wouldn't. There's a sense of excitement. Venus in Aries she's seeking some kind of thrill. She's seeking some kind of excitement. Her instincts are really revved up. Her passions are really revved up. She can be very impulsive, though. So this is the other thing I guess we need to be aware of as well. That there might be strong impulses towards something, towards a relationship, towards, I'm going to go into ventures and finances in a minute because she does describe that sort of stuff too. But just that sense of feeling alive and feeling excited and ready to put yourself out there again. The paradox, though, with Venus in Aries is that on the one hand, because she has such a strong, passionate, erotic sort of nature about her, she's driven, therefore, and motivated to merge with another so she can experience those passions, right? Which is very natural for Venus in Aries. But what can happen with Venus in Aries is she can make those initiations, but if she feels that she's getting too close to somebody or somebody's getting too close to her, it's almost an unconscious sort of response. There's a sense of her freedom or independence starts to feel a bit threatened because maybe that other person is too needy or too clingy or wants to get very serious very quickly. And Venus in Aries, she doesn't want to get serious. She just wants to get down and have some fun. You know, she just wants to explore and explore her passions and share all those things. So it's a fun kind of energy. It's not a serious energy. And as I said, Venus in Aries is not enough to sort of indicate, you know, a serious love relationship, but it can certainly arouse and bring up quite a bit of excitement and enthusiasm and desire to start something new, you know, and if you're in a relationship, it can just really spice up that part of your life, all things to do with Venus in the relationship. It can also bring about, you know, some conflict as well, because Aries is a sign of conflict. It's ruled by Mars, and Mars is the planet of conflict. So, you know, she might inspire or trigger some conflicts because maybe, you know, there's a sense of you're being too demanding towards your partner or the relationship or vice versa. On the other hand, conflict is not always a bad thing. Conflict is usually viewed as something that's toxic and negative, and it just depends on how you view conflict and what sort of conflict we are talking about. Sometimes it's conflict in a relationship that can, you know, bring things to the surface, air things out, so to speak, and shift it and move it, and it can be resolved or transformed or changed or released or removed, whatever you want to call it. So, you know, because there's a lot of us are in situations where we're creatures of habit, we become complacent, we don't necessarily take the lead or step up and speak about, you know, what it is we really need or desire or want to, you know, work on, or whatever the case may be. I mean, women tend to be more open about those things. I'm not being sexist here. I'm not making a judgment. There's a lot of guys that can do that, but it is more of a feminine quality is what I'm trying to say. So the Venus in Aries can stimulate all these things in a relationship. And if you're not in a relationship, it could just be the instigating sort of factor that kicks in for you now, where you sort of take the leap or just put yourself out there more. I just want to quickly bring up the chart. This is not going to be a long video, and, you know, I'm just making some general comments. And I've just, have I shared my screen? Just double check. Okay, sharing my screen now. The comments I've made are, you know, they're pretty general sort of comments, which is fine. It's just a way to introduce, you know, some of the points of Venus in Aries, just Venus in Aries alone. But here's what I really want to focus on now. This is the chart for when Venus ingressed into Aries. You can see she's just gone into Aries there. She's 0001, which means she's 1 minute into Aries, okay? This is Australian Eastern Standard Time. So it's a chart for Melbourne, Australia, 2:42 a.m. on the 21st of April. Don't worry about the location of where everything is. It doesn't really matter because this is all going to change depending on, which part of the planet you are on. So it's not about looking at the house location. It's the most important thing about this chart is this. Venus in Aries at 0 degrees in 1 minute, conjunct Chiron at 3 degrees. She's also conjunct Mercury and she's also conjunct Vesta, okay? They're just some extra sort of layers. And she's also square Juno, which is quite interesting. But I think the thing that really speaks very strongly to me is the Venus in Aries conjunct the Chiron. That's a very important conjunction. So this is setting the theme and the undertone and the energy, the vibration for Venus in Aries over the next few weeks. And look, I have to be honest, Venus conjunct Chiron is not an easy configuration. It really is the energy that speaks to our wounds. So Chiron conjunct Venus is going to arouse or trigger or stimulate some wounds through an interaction you have with somebody, could be even on a social level, friendship, or in your actual relationship if you're in one, or if you do meet someone around this time, just be aware that this energy is bringing Chiron into the picture. So the Chiron factor is really suggesting that something about a connection that you make, or if you're in a current relationship, the Chiron will stimulate some kind of wound, right? And it'll be basically through perhaps what somebody does towards you or what somebody says. That's the initial experience, right, of this energy, you could say. If you're not in a relationship, that Chiron energy there could really be speaking to the fact that you feel quite hurt, you feel lonely, you feel a bit sad, that you're not in a relationship. It brings up those raw sort of feelings that you have perhaps about not being in a relationship at the moment. It's a very, very sensitive energy there, that Chiron-Venus conjunction. So I guess we just need to be aware of that, starting from yesterday really, and taking us through over the next few weeks. But the higher end of this, or the more elevated end of this, is the question becomes, what is it in you that gets triggered that's really quite hurtful, right? Through somebody's response to you, somebody's comment to you, somebody's actions towards you. So the way to work with this energy on a healthy level is to not project that energy onto the other person. It'll definitely be instigated by another, but when it is, and if it is for you, the trick, and I think the more holistic and healing quality of this will be to address and ask the question to yourself, what is it about me in this situation that I need to resolve within my own self? What is this deep sort of pain that's rising in me, in my pain body, as Eckhart Tolle has termed or coined an aspect of our, it's not our physical body, it's called a pain body. And that's a very good word to describe Chiron as well, because Chiron does bring up quite deep pain within us. So instead of getting angry or pissed off or resentful or reactive, because Aries is a very reactive sign, it's instinctual. Okay, the instinctual component is great because you can sharpen your instincts, you can work on your instincts, and your gut instincts are always correct. It's just about recognizing what is a gut instinct and what isn't, right? That's another story in terms of how you do that. But anyway, you guys know your own self and you know your own instincts and so forth. So, this energy, Aries, is bringing up some really primal, instinctual desires and needs and behaviors. And the Chiron there is really saying, if something does come up in a situation, take a step back and examine your own self, because Aries is self. It's all about the self, right? So turn that energy within and focus on yourself. Instead of, as I said a moment ago, instead of projecting it onto the other person, because remember that Chiron equals rejection, right? So when Chiron is in the mix, and here we have Chiron very closely conjunct to Venus, it might be that you put yourself out there, open yourself up to somebody, even if it's just for one day or one night or whatever, and you don't experience perhaps what you thought you were going to. Maybe the person is not able to give you perhaps what you wanted. So how does one take that? They take it as a rejection. It's a blow to the ego. It hurts when you want somebody and they don't reciprocate what you intended. It feels like a rejection, right? So these are the sorts of things that can come up with that Chiron in Aries. But the valuable component to this is that it forces you to look back onto yourself. When you can do that, when you can look back at yourself and examine your own feelings, examine your own pain, your own wounds, you take responsibility for that and you own it, which actually is a self-empowering thing to do. The minute we project blame or project whatever onto another human being, we lose our power. That's what we actually are doing, because it is simply, this is a statement that is behind projecting something onto another. And it goes both ways, right? It's like, it's because of you that I feel really great. I feel really happy. I feel so blissful because you make me feel so good. The minute that person pulls that rug from under your feet, so to speak, in other words, is not making you feel good, then the experience rises within you, in the pain body especially, of it's your fault that I feel terrible. It's your fault that I feel like shit. You've rejected me. Do you see what I'm saying? So you're giving the power over to another human being, and you're letting them decide whether you should be happy or not, which, when you really think about that, it's insane because no one can fulfill the happiness that you are seeking but source, right? The divine. That's the connection that ultimately leads to that unconditional love and fulfillment that we are all seeking and desiring and wanting. So, it's about not having the expectations, right? And not projecting. It's about being present. It's about accepting the situation, whatever it is. The minute you accept a situation, the resistance or the tension or the anger or whatever it may be is diffused because you've accepted it. You're not wrestling with it. You're not resisting it. You're allowing it. When you allow something, it comes through, right? It rises and then it dissipates. It resolves and it moves. That's what energy does, That's why, everything is energy. Every single thing, and obviously including our physical bodies. So this is all relevant because the Venus in Chiron can really, really bring up these issues around wounds in relationships. And, it could be that you, as I said before, are really open and really direct and really put yourself out there, and somebody rejects that. And the lesson behind that is, instead of being angry at that person or upset at that person, examine your own intentions, examine your own feelings, examine your own self-worth and value. Because if you're waiting for somebody else to value you or to nurture your self-worth, then again, you're just giving your power over to somebody else. So this is the message in the Venus in Aries. This is what Venus in Aries can do. It can really stand, in herself, right? She can stand in herself, and she can have that courage, right? That she can internalize, if you like, that passion and that desire and that fire and that courage to purify this energy, right? Because the lower desires and manifestations, and when I say lower and higher, I'm not making a judgment of good or bad. It's just simply that there are certain vibrations that take our energy higher, and there are certain vibrations that drag our energy down. It's as simple as that. And we know that on a day-to-day basis. We don't pay attention to it most of the time, but it's there. It's happening all the time. So, simple example, if you do something that makes you feel good, then you feel good, right? If you participate in something that lowers your vibration, let's just say that you get into a really aggressive argument with somebody, it's going to lower your vibration, whether you like it or not, because you're reacting. It's the ego reacting. This is the sort of stuff that Venus and Chiron can bring up. But I did say earlier, and I still will say this again, that this energy can bring things up to the surface and can help clear things, It can help address things, because Aries is very confronting. It's very, very direct. Aries doesn't take any shit. It just, it says it, it's direct, it puts it out there. But if that's what you're doing, then you kind of have to be prepared to deal with the consequences of that as well, right? To have some awareness, self-awareness, and also awareness of the other. And this is where the Libra polarity is very important, because the opposite sign to Aries is Libra. So Venus in Aries, because she's in her detriment, she needs to really embrace the polarity of Libra here. So it's really a beautiful dance and balance between being able to be honest, direct, assertive, and being able to also understand the other person, right? Libra. So it's a delicate mix and dance of those energies. But Venus and Chiron, tricky energy. I suspect that people will experience some of what I've said to some degree or another. Now, when it comes to finances, just to wrap this video up, because the main thing I really wanted to talk about was that Venus Chiron. I just feel that that's a very important vibration there with Venus in Aries conjunct Chiron. That's the chart, and that's the energy of what's going to have an undertone until the 15th of May, essentially. So it's up to you how you use that energy, but that's the sort of inherent undertones, if you like. Now, Venus in Aries financially or for business ventures is great, because it gives you that confidence and courage to step into something, right? To take a risk. And if we don't take risks in life, we don't grow, and we'll never know what something could have been. See, those of us that are more reserved, that are more conservative and cautious, which are usually the earth signs and water signs as well, the earth and water signs don't really like to take risks. So this Venus in Aries, if you're the sort of person that's more cautious and more conservative, this Venus in Aries might just help stimulate, give you that greater sense of confidence and courage to begin a new enterprise, right? To begin a new venture, to make the next decision that requires a lot of courage, and that requires taking a risk as well. Now, I'm not saying that you should go and gamble your money or anything like that. I'm talking in sensible ways, right? I'm just simply saying that this archetypal energy can really stimulate that level of courage and confidence when it comes to starting new things in terms of business ventures, okay? So this is active over the next few weeks. So if you're feeling this, and if it's mirroring something in your life at the moment, then go with your gut instinct, right? And follow that through, because taking that risk and having that courage will help you get to that next level, get to that next step. Just one final point. Venus is quintile Mars in this chart. So quintiles are not normal sort of ordinary aspects. They're a little bit out there, more obscure. And it's very difficult to interpret the quintile in the scope of finances and things like that. So I'm not going to do that. But what I do want to say is that, see, Venus and Mars are quintile, and those two planets really speak to the sensual, erotic, passionate pleasures of life, right? And the quintile aspect can also stimulate that kind of erotic sort of energy, because the number 5 is connected to the senses of the body, you see, and the quintile is made up through the number 5. But what I wanted to say was that if you are a creative person, and also if you are a person who, how can I put this in a broad sort of sense? Well, the quintile can really stimulate creative, spiritual juice, right? It can really bring out something in you that is of a much higher vibration and is connected to a higher sort of purpose and expression, right? It does require a lot of intense focus. Quintiles take us into this space where we have this really intense kind of focus with something. And it's kind of like the muses in life, you know, the muses in terms of their mythical sort of meaning and story, which is where the word music comes from. Muses inspired people. That's what they did, right? So the quintile aspect has that quality to it, where it can inspire this creative, spiritual flow that can be very, very powerful. Now, I don't really see this being relevant in a love relationship. I'm merely talking about your creative life, right? Your creative juice, your creative expression. So if you are at this point in your life, if you're working on something creatively, this energy with the Venus in Aries just started a day or so ago, being quintile Mars, has this vibration to her as well. But it is a very, very subtle vibration. It's a very, it's so subtle that you really have to be in this spiritual sort of zone, if you like, on a creative level to tap into this energy and draw from it what it can actually inspire and bring out in you. So it might just help a creative process that you have going on at the moment. It's a very beautiful aspect, actually. But as I said, it's a very subtle energy. So it's really about getting into that zone and that space and accessing it and tapping into it. Now, the Venus square Juno is interesting because Juno is the principle of marriage and commitment and relationships and partnerships. So there's a sense of tension here with Juno and Venus. And the way this speaks to me is that if you're in a current partnership, commitment, marriage, relationship, this Venus in Aries square Juno in Cancer, it might bring up the conflict within your own self of the need for independence and freedom versus the commitments to the relationship and your family. So there might be this inner sense of conflict over these next couple of weeks where it's the resolution lies in being able to honor the aspects of you that describe your independence and freedom as a person, and also integrating and balancing out the commitments in relationship and family, how to bring those two together where they are both being acknowledged and honored in some kind of way, right? So that can be a bit of a conflicting sort of point over the next couple of weeks. But again, it's, you know, as I said, conflict is not always a negative and toxic thing. Conflict can create resolution. It can bring things up to the surface. And Aries is you know, Aries shoots straight, right? It doesn't shoot sideways or backwards. It shoots straight. So whatever comes up to the surface is going to be right there in your face. But it is an opportunity to resolve and work through it as well. Just depends how you interact with this energy, what it brings up for you, the intentions, the desires, and also the ability to, as I said, look at your own self with what does come up, as opposed to just projecting onto another person. Because the minute you look back at your own self, you've created a sense of self-empowerment. This is not an ego thing, by the way. It's not a I'm better than you, I'm more evolved than you, or I'm, you know, more powerful than you. That's just nonsense, right? I'm talking about going to a deeper space within your own self where you really face yourself and are really brutally honest with what may be upsetting or hurting you, or where you feel wounded in some kind of way, and finding the space within to resolve that. Because it's Aries, you have to do it yourself. It's Aries is about working on yourself, you know. It's so that's where it's at. Okay, I think I've covered all of what I wanted to say. Okay, so that was just supposed to be a short little overview of Venus in Aries. I hope it's helpful for you, and or for all you guys in some kind of way. If it speaks to you, it speaks to you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's all good. I mean, naturally, you know, in order to get a larger, bigger picture perspective and understanding of what's happening in your world of relationships and what's happening in your world of finances, then one needs to, you know, look at the entire chart, right? So this exploration today was just looking at Venus in Aries, but more specifically the Venus in Aries conjunct Chiron in Aries, because I think that that's a very powerful conjunction, and especially since Chiron just entered Aries very recently. So we're going to have quite a bit of this this energy of Chiron relating back to ourself and healing our sense of identity, right? Okay, see you guys soon. Much love and blessings, and I hope you guys had a nice full moon, which was not that long ago. In fact, that chart that we just looked at, the moon was still full in that chart. The sun had ingressed into Taurus, and the moon looked like it was quite a fair way past the sun, but it was still a full moon. So that Venus in Aries, she entered Aries while the full moon was, where are we? Let me just check something out just to be 100% sure. So it's 16 degrees. Yeah. So the full moon was in Libra, but in the chart that we just looked at, the moon was in Scorpio, and it was still a full moon. So in other words, what I'm saying is that this Venus in Aries chart we just looked at has the vibration of the full moon, but in the sign of Scorpio. Okay, leave your comments and questions below, guys. I love your comments and questions and feedback. I love and appreciate all of you, and thank you to all new subscribers as well, and to others that have been with me for some time. Feel free to contact me for a reading, any type of reading, or if you have questions around what sort of readings I do, just feel free to email me. See you guys soon. Much love. Bye.